So now we move from politics to policy, although that's perhaps being too unkind to Rob and Matthias, because there was some policy in there as well. But now I guess we shift a gear. Just before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Noel Rowland, the CEO of the Institute. I know many of you in the room, but there are a few not familiar faces to me, so welcome. Great to have you with us this morning. I'm also one of the directors of the Tax Foundation. I just wanted to, for only a short minute or so, just give you a little bit more information about the Foundation, because I know most of you would be well aware of the Tax Institute's activities, but not necessarily about the Australian Tax Research Foundation. And so just briefly, for those of you who don't know about the Foundation, it was established in 1982 as an independent research organisation and founded by 4 organisations, of which the Tax Institute was one. The Tax Institute is now the only organisation that still supports the Foundation, but those activities are incredibly important, which is why the Institute's still there as I guess a continuing and supporting Foundation member. What you may not be aware of is the Foundation, since 1982, has been publishing research from conducted by all sorts of people. It also commissions research and runs conferences. And there is, and has been over the almost 30-year period, the amount of research that's been conducted, you would have to say it's almost every tax policy area that you could possibly imagine, the Foundation has funded or commissioned or published research. Everything from tax avoidance to taxing popularity to congestion taxes to cash economy to business tax reform, FBT. The range and breadth of publications is absolutely enormous. All the publications are available, and I'd suggest that some of you may be interested in having a look at them. If you go to the Australian Tax Research Foundation website, just Google ATRF or Australian Tax Research Foundation, you'll see the list of publications. They are all available. There's a number I've got here. One that you may be familiar with is Tax Facts, Fiction and Reform, which is a publication that we did that was written and authored by Neil Warren, who would be well known to most of you. But as I said, have a look at them. The resources available in the Foundation are absolutely outstanding, and particularly in the context of the very important debate that we're in at the moment, some great resources there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker this morning, Greg Smith, very well known to all of you, I'm sure. Greg was a member of the panel for the Future Tax System Review, or the Henry Review as it's more commonly known. Greg is an adjunct professor of economic and social policy at the Australian Catholic University and a board member of the Centre for Policy Development. Until 2004, Greg held numerous positions in Treasury. There are a lot, so I won't go through them, but held some very important positions, and certainly from a tax policy sense, there are not many people who are more qualified and have a better sense of the history and the potential future for tax policy and reform than Greg, so we are very lucky to have him with us today. Greg was also a governor of the Tax Research Foundation, but is still a member of the Research Foundation's Research Committee. And it's particularly a pleasure of mine to introduce Greg. I've done so on a number of occasions. He's been a great supporter of the Institute and the Foundation for many years, so it's great to have him back with us today. Can you please welcome Greg? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for those kind words and for giving me the opportunity to address you today. I have been working in public policy reform since 1978. Tax reform since 1983. So I know that reform is possible in Australia. In fact, that's one reason Australia punches above its weight in public policy and in public administration. You worry about Australia until you look at everyone else, when you start suddenly to feel a little bit more optimistic. I was also heartened this morning by the 2 addresses this morning from the politicians, because They focused, I thought, on two things which are critical to achieving reform. One is process, very important, and the other is the links. Tax is the biggest economic intervention that any government anywhere makes, but it is linked to all of the other fields of public policy. That's why I concentrated on it, because tax scared all of my peers, but gave me an in to every policy issue that's been conducted over the last 30 years. So that was fun. The Henry Review provided a third critical requirement beyond process and links, and that is a vision. Over the last 30 years of the reforming that we've done, we've had a vision that had been developed by people like Asprey and Campbell in particular. So we had these templates for what Australia needed to do that guided us over a long period, decades, of reform. And we probably took those agendas close to completion with the GST. So the idea that we needed a further vision, perhaps a refreshed vision, for long-run change was what essentially, well, that's how we saw the task coming to our review. It was a consensus report, 5 of us actually, a consensus report. Consensus was probably possible, to be honest, because it was a long-run vision. The minute you do what we're now doing, what we're going to do today, or what we are doing today, which is to bring that forward and start talking about the short and perhaps more importantly medium term, consensus actually becomes more difficult. We confront more of the process and linkage issues. The vision itself no longer is enough to get a result.